At the divorce courthouse, my husband stood so close to me. I could smell his cologne, the same one I bought him for our anniversary, back when I still believed we were a team. He leaned down, smiling, slow, cruel. "This is the best day of my life," he whispered. "I'm taking everything from you." His girlfriend stood just a few steps behind him. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, laughing like this was entertainment. People were watching. Strangers, lawyers, couples holding folders like shields. And me, standing there, silent, humiliated, trying not to disappear. My name is Emily Carter. Before I tell you what happened next, please take 1 second and subscribe to this channel, because stories like mine remind us of one truth: it's never too late to reclaim your life. And before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from today? Now listen closely, because what my husband didn't know that morning was that this divorce was not going to end the way he planned. The courthouse was cold, not just from the air conditioning, but from the way people looked at each other inside. Jason, my husband, walked like he owned the building. Tailored suit, confident stride, that same look he used to wear when he thought he was winning. Beside him was Vanessa, young, carefully dressed, her hand wrapped around his arm, like a trophy already claimed. She looked at me, then looked away, as if I wasn't even worth the effort. Jason stopped in the middle of the hallway, loud enough for people to hear. "You ready to be homeless?" he said. Not joking, not whispering. He wanted witnesses. "The house is mine," he added. "I paid for it. I protected you. And today, you leave with nothing." Vanessa laughed. Actually laughed. My lawyer, Michael Harris, stood quietly at my side. He didn't interrupt, didn't react. He only leaned in, just slightly, and whispered something that didn't sound comforting at all. "Emily, no matter what happens today, do not respond. Let them talk." I nodded, even though my chest felt tight. That house wasn't just walls and wood. It was my safety, my memories, my last place to breathe. And standing a few feet away, watching all of this unfold, was Dorothy Carter, Jason's mother. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just sat there, hands folded, eyes forward, silent. And that silence was the first sign that something in this story was about to change. But I didn't understand it yet, and neither did Jason. Jason wasn't always cruel, at least, not in the beginning. When we first met, he was charming, confident, the kind of man who made decisions quickly and spoke like he knew exactly where life was headed. Back then, I mistook certainty for safety. I was 32, new to the city, working long hours, tired of always being the one who carried everything alone. Jason noticed that. "You don't have to struggle anymore," he told me once, his hand warm around mine, his voice steady. "I've got this." And I believed him. Our marriage didn't start with shouting, or fear, or control. It started with small trades. I let him choose the neighborhood, because he said he understood real estate better. I let him handle the paperwork, because numbers made my head hurt back then. I let him speak for us at family dinners, because he was louder, more confident. And I didn't like conflict. Each time I stepped back, he stepped forward. Slowly, quietly, the space around me shrank. The house came later. A beautiful 2-story place. Quiet street, big windows, a kitchen filled with morning light. I remember standing in the empty living room, our footsteps echoing, my heart racing with hope. "This will be ours," I said. Jason smiled, but it wasn't the same smile he gave me when we were alone. "This is a smart investment," he replied. "My name will be on everything. That just makes it simpler." Simpler. That word followed me for years. It was simpler if he paid the bills. Simpler if he dealt with repairs. Simpler if I trusted him. And I did. At first, his control was invisible. Then it became instructions.
Don't worry about that.
I'll handle it. You don't need to read this. Just sign here. He'd slide papers across the table. Casual, impatient. Already reaching for his phone. And I'd sign. Because I was his wife. Because I trusted him. Because I didn't think someone who kissed me goodnight would ever plan to erase me. The change didn't happen overnight. It happened in tone, in size, in eye rolls, in jokes made just loud enough for others to hear. Emily's not great with money. Emily wouldn't understand this stuff. Emily prefers to stay out of grown-up decisions.
People laughed.
I smiled. But something inside me started to fold inward. Quietly, like paper creasing again and again, until it can't lie flat anymore. By the time Vanessa appeared, Jason already spoke to me, like I was a burden. By the time he said he wanted a divorce, I wasn't shocked. What shocked me was how certain he was that I would walk away with nothing. Standing in that courthouse hallway, watching him laugh, watching her cling to his arm, I realized something painful. Jason wasn't just leaving me. He was erasing me. And as I stood there, trying to remember when I'd stopped asking questions, a single thought pressed hard against my chest. Why was he so confident about that house? Because if there was one thing I knew now, that kind of confidence never comes without a reason. Vanessa didn't enter our lives quietly. She arrived like a statement. Loud heels, perfect posture, that practiced confidence of someone who believes she's already won. The first time I saw her, Jason didn't even bother to introduce us. She's coming with me, he said simply, grabbing his jacket. Already halfway out the door. No explanation. No apology. Just assumption. After that, she was everywhere. At restaurants we used to love. In photos on his phone, he forgot to hide. In stories he told too casually. She works with me. She needed advice. She's just a friend. The lies weren't even creative. And the worst part, he didn't look guilty. He looked relieved. Vanessa made sure I noticed her. She'd comment on my social media posts. Heart emojis. Sweet words dripping with false kindness. Beautiful home. You're so lucky to have Jason. Lucky. That word felt sharp. She showed up at events uninvited. Stood too close to him. Laughed too loudly at his jokes. And Jason let her. By the time he told me he wanted a divorce, he didn't sit me down. He said it while scrolling on his phone. I'm done pretending, he said. This marriage doesn't work for me anymore. For me. Not for us. Not for the years we built together. Just him. A week later, he stopped coming home. Another week. And Vanessa posted photos from places Jason claimed were business dinners. I didn't confront him. I didn't beg. I didn't cry in front of them. I learned something important during that time. Silence makes arrogant people reckless. In the courthouse hallway, Vanessa leaned in close to Jason, whispering something that made him laugh. Then she looked straight at me. Not through me. At me. Her eyes scanned my clothes, my face, my stillness.
And she smirked.
You should have fought harder, she said softly, like advice. Jason didn't stop her. He enjoyed it. That's when he said it. Loud enough for everyone waiting nearby to hear. The house is mine, he announced. I paid for it. I own it. And after today, she's out. Vanessa nodded, satisfied, already imagining herself in my kitchen. Their confidence was absolute, unshaken. As if the outcome was signed, sealed, and already celebrated. I glanced toward my lawyer, searching for reassurance. Michael Harris didn't smile, didn't frown. He just watched Jason, the way someone watches a man, walking confidently toward a cliff he doesn't see. And then, something small happened. Something almost invisible. Jason pulled a folder from his bag, flipped through pages, and slid a document across a bench. Without looking at it. Sign here, he said to Vanessa casually. Just standard stuff. She signed, laughing. Jason signed too. Fast, careless, certain, and in that moment, I felt it, a shift, like the ground beneath him had just cracked, and he had no idea. The house, that was always the weapon. Jason didn't threaten me with money, or alimony, or custody we didn't have. He threatened me with walls, with doors, with keys, with a place where I slept, when everything else in my life felt uncertain. You'll be out by the weekend, he told me once, casually, like he was talking about returning groceries. I'll change the locks. It's cleaner that way. Cleaner. As if removing me was just another task on his list. That house had been my anchor. The quiet mornings, coffee by the window, the hallway light I always forgot to turn off at night. I painted those walls, chose those curtains, learned the way the floors creaked, so I could walk softly when I couldn't sleep. And yet, Jason spoke about it like it was a prize he'd already won. Standing in that courthouse hallway, I finally asked the question I should have asked years ago. How exactly did we buy that house? Not the story Jason told everyone, but the real one. Because when I searched my memory, the details were blurry. I remembered signing papers. Lots of them. I remembered Jason saying, "Don't worry, Em. This is routine." Routine. That word again. I leaned toward Michael, my voice barely there. "Do I have any chance?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked me something strange. "Emily, did you ever see the original ownership documents?" I swallowed. "No," I said honestly. He nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something. Jason noticed us whispering. He turned, smiling wide. That same smile he used right before delivering bad news. "Getting nervous?" he asked loudly. "Don't worry. I'll be generous." Vanessa laughed. "You can crash on a friend's couch," she added. For a while, they thought this was kindness. The courtroom doors opened. Everyone began filing in. Jason brushed past me, his shoulder hitting mine, just hard enough to remind me who he thought was in control. "Last chance," he murmured. "Sign what my lawyer sent. Walk away with something small. Or leave with nothing." My heart pounded, but my feet stayed still. Because something about Michael's silence didn't feel like defeat. It felt like waiting. Inside the courtroom, Jason took his seat confidently. Vanessa sat behind him, legs crossed, already bored. I sat beside Michael, hands folded tightly in my lap. And then Dorothy Carter entered, Jason's mother. She didn't look at him, didn't look at me either. She walked slowly, carefully, and took her seat in the front row. Jason glanced at her, surprised. "What are you doing here?" he whispered sharply. Dorothy didn't answer. She didn't even turn her head. The judge entered. Everyone stood, and as we sat back down, I saw Dorothy's hands. Steady, calm, no shaking, no fear, just patience. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying and hopeful. At the same time, whatever was coming next, Dorothy had known, long before any of us walked into this courtroom. Dorothy Carter had never liked me. At least, that's what I told myself for years. She was polite, formal, distant. Never cruel, never warm either. At family dinners, she spoke to Jason more than she spoke to me, asked him about work, his plans, his future. When she asked about me, it was always careful. "How's Emily settling in? Is Emily comfortable here? Never are you happy." I thought she saw me as temporary. After the wedding, the distance grew. Dorothy didn't interfere, didn't criticize, but she watched. Her eyes followed conversations, the way someone listens for what isn't being said. When Jason interrupted me, she noticed. When he dismissed my opinions, she noticed. But she never stepped in, and I mistook her silence for disapproval. The house was the turning point. when Jason told his parents. We were buying it. Dorothy didn't celebrate. She asked questions. Quiet ones. Who chose the location? How was it financed? Whose name would be on the papers? Jason laughed them off. Mom, relax. I've got it handled. Dorothy nodded, but her eyes stayed sharp. Months later, she visited the house once, walked slowly from room to room, touching door frames, standing too long in the living room. This place holds a lot of weight, she said finally. Jason scoffed. It's just a house. Dorothy looked at him then, really looked at him, and said nothing. In the courtroom now, she sat the same way, back straight, hands folded, not looking at Jason,
Not looking at me.
as if emotions had already been decided. Long ago. Jason leaned toward her. You're here to support me, right? He whispered. Dorothy didn't answer. Vanessa noticed. Her smile faltered, just slightly. Michael leaned closer to me. You never told me, he said quietly. Dorothy was this observant. I didn't know, I whispered back. And that was the truth. I didn't know her at all. The judge began reviewing the case. Jason's lawyer spoke first, confident, smooth, already laying claim to the house. My stomach twisted. Jason nodded along, certain, smug. Vanessa scrolled on her phone, bored, waiting for her victory. Dorothy sat still, completely still. Then the judge looked up. Is Mrs. Carter present? She asked. Dorothy raised her head slowly. Yes, she said.
Her voice was calm.
Clear, the room shifted. Not dramatically, just enough, and Jason turned in his seat, confusion flickering across his face, because for the first time, his mother hadn't shown up to stand beside him, but to be heard. Michael had warned me, quietly, before we ever stepped into that courtroom. Emily, he said back then, hands folded on his desk, voice careful. This case isn't about emotion. It's about timing. I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. Now, sitting beside him, watching Jason's lawyer speak with confidence, I finally felt it, the waiting. Jason's lawyer talked about numbers, about responsibility, about how Jason had provided and how I had benefited. Words like assets, ownership, entitlement. Jason sat tall, arms crossed, already imagining the judge agreeing. Every few seconds, Vanessa glanced back at me, checking to see if I was breaking. I wasn't. Not because I was strong, but because I was numb. When Jason's lawyer finished, the judge turned toward Michael. Counsel, she asked. Michael stood slowly. Not rushed, not dramatic. He didn't argue. He didn't interrupt. He asked a single question. Your Honor, before we proceed, may we clarify the origin of the property in question? Jason scoffed quietly. His lawyer rolled his eyes. The origin is irrelevant, Jason muttered. I paid for it. The judge raised a hand. Answer the question, she said. Michael nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. Then he turned to Jason. Mr. Carter, when you purchased the house, were you aware of any trust connected to the property? The room went silent. Jason blinked. A trust, he repeated, confused, amused. No, he said quickly. There's no trust. It's my house. Vanessa smiled again. Michael didn't react. He simply reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thin folder. Not thick, not dramatic, just thin. Mrs. Carter, he said calmly, looking toward Dorothy. Would you please stand? Jason turned fully now. What is this? He snapped. Mom, what's going on? Dorothy stood. Slowly, steadily, she didn't look at Jason. She looked at the judge. Yes, she said. I will. Jason laughed nervously. This is ridiculous, he said. You're embarrassing yourself. Dorothy didn't flinch. Michael placed the folder on the table. Your Honor, he continued, this property is not jointly owned, and it is not solely owned by Mr. Carter. Jason's smile vanished. Vanessa's phone lowered. The house, Michael said carefully, is held by a family trust, established several years ago. Jason stood up. That's impossible, he said sharply. I would know. Michael looked at him. Respectfully, you signed the documents. Jason froze. The judge leaned forward. Sit down, Mr. Carter, she said firmly. Jason sat. Slowly, his confidence leaking away. One breath at a time. Dorothy finally turned toward him. And for the first time since I'd known her, there was something unmistakable in her eyes. Not anger. Not regret. Resolve. And that was when I realized Jason hadn't just underestimated me. He had underestimated the one person who had been watching him all along. Jason didn't panic right away. At first, he tried to laugh it off. This is some technical misunderstanding, he said, forcing a smile. Glancing at Vanessa for support. She didn't laugh back. She watched Dorothy now, carefully, as if trying to recalculate the room. The judge turned to Dorothy. Mrs. Carter, she said calmly, can you explain the nature of this trust? Dorothy nodded once. Yes, Your Honor. Her voice didn't shake. I created the trust 5 years ago, she continued, after my husband passed. Jason stiffened. You never told me that, he snapped. Dorothy didn't look at him. That was intentional, she replied simply. The room felt smaller. Dorothy explained slowly, methodically, without emotion. She had transferred family funds, not to Jason, but into a trust. The purpose? To protect the house. To protect Emily, she said. Jason jerked his head toward me. What? He blurted. Dorothy finally turned fully toward him. I watched you, she said quietly, for years. I watched how you spoke to her, how you dismissed her, how you treated her silence as weakness. Jason's face flushed. Vanessa shifted in her seat. I hoped you'd change, Dorothy continued. I hoped you'd grow up. Her voice hardened. When you didn't, I acted. She looked back at the judge. Emily is the sole beneficiary of the trust. The words landed heavy, permanent, unavoidable. Jason stood again. That's insane, he shouted. She's my wife. That house is mine. The judge's gavel struck.
Sit
down. Jason obeyed. Barely. Michael stepped forward. Your Honor, he said, the trust includes a clause. Jason's head snapped up. A clause, he repeated. Michael nodded. One that activates. Upon divorce proceedings. Filed by Mr. Carter. Vanessa's breath caught. Jason swallowed hard. Dorothy folded her hands. You were in a hurry, she said softly to her son, and you never read what you signed. Jason's mouth opened, but no sound came out, because for the first time, he realized. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan, and it had been waiting for him to walk straight into it. The courtroom felt different now, heavier, thicker, like the air itself had decided
to stop moving.
Jason sat frozen, his hands clenched so tight. His knuckles had gone white. Vanessa leaned toward him, her voice low, urgent. What does that mean? She whispered. You said everything was clean. Jason didn't answer, because for the first time, he didn't know what to say. Michael didn't rush. He waited, letting the silence do the work. Then he spoke. The clause is very specific, Your Honor, he said calmly. It states that if Jason Carter initiates divorce proceedings, his interest in the property is permanently waived. Jason jolted upright. That's not possible, he said hoarsely. You can't just erase someone like that. Dorothy finally looked at him again. You erased Emily, she replied quietly. The room went still. Vanessa's face tightened. So what? She snapped, trying to regain control. She still lived there. She benefited. Michael turned toward her. Living in a house and owning it are not the same thing. Vanessa scoffed, but her voice wavered. The judge removed her glasses. Mr. Carter, she said evenly, did you read the trust documents? Before signing, Jason opened his mouth, then closed it. The answer sat in the silence. Michael continued. The trust was structured to protect Emily in the event she was ever pushed out, financially or otherwise. Jason's jaw trembled. That was my mother's money, he muttered. She had no right. Dorothy shook her head slowly. It was my money, she corrected. And it was my responsibility. Vanessa shifted back in her chair. Her confidence was gone now, replaced by calculation. She leaned away from Jason, just enough to notice. The judge reviewed the documents again, page by page, careful, thorough. Each flip of paper felt like a countdown. Jason's breathing grew shallow. Vanessa checked her phone, then slid it quietly into her purse. Michael watched her do it. So did I. Finally, the judge looked up. Mr. Carter, she said, based on what I see here, you have no ownership claim to the house. Jason shook his head. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Vanessa stared straight ahead. She didn't touch him, didn't defend him, didn't even look at him. The judge wasn't finished. There is another matter, she added. Jason looked up slowly, fear replacing anger, and something in her tone told us this case was about to get even worse for him. Jason's confidence didn't just crack. It collapsed inward. The judge flipped to another page. Then another, her expression unreadable. There is another matter, she repeated, and the way she said it made Jason's shoulders tense. Michael straightened beside me. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. Your Honor, Michael said, measured, steady. Before the court issues a final ruling, there is testimony relevant to the intent behind the trust. The judge nodded. Proceed. Michael turned toward Dorothy. Mrs. Carter, he said gently, would you tell the court why you created the trust the way you did? Dorothy inhaled slowly, not shakily, not nervously, like someone finally allowed to speak the truth out loud. I loved my son, she began, and Jason looked up at that. For just a second, hope flickered. But loving someone, she continued, does not mean protecting them from the consequences of who they choose to be. Jason's jaw tightened. Vanessa shifted again. Dorothy's voice remained calm. I watched Jason grow more controlling as the years passed, not violent, but dismissive, entitled. She paused. I watched Emily shrink. My chest tightened. But I didn't look away. I also watched her stay, Dorothy said, long after she should have felt safe enough to leave. Jason shook his head. This is ridiculous, he muttered. You're exaggerating. The judge raised a hand. Mr. Carter, you will remain silent. Dorothy continued. When my husband died, I learned something painful, that money doesn't protect people. Foresight does. She looked directly at the judge. I created the trust to make sure this house would never be used as leverage against Emily. Jason swallowed. Vanessa finally spoke. So you planned this? She asked sharply. You planned to ruin him? Dorothy turned to her. No, she said simply. I planned to protect her. Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it. Michael stepped forward. The trust also required Mr. Carter's acknowledgement, he said, which he provided multiple times. He lifted a document, each signature voluntary. Jason stared at the paper,
as if seeing it for the first time.
He remembered now. The meetings, the papers, the rushed explanations. His own voice saying, just give me the pen. The judge set the file down. Intent is clear, she said. Jason leaned forward desperately. Mom, you didn't have to do this, he pleaded. Dorothy looked at him, and for the first time, there was sadness there. I did, she said quietly, because no one else would. The judge straightened. The court will now issue a preliminary ruling, she said. Jason's breath hitched. Vanessa crossed her arms, her distance from him, now unmistakable. And as the judge began to speak, I realized something powerful. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about truth, finally being spoken, where it could no longer be ignored. The judge's voice cut through the room. Clear, measured, final in a way that made my stomach twist. Based on the evidence presented, she began. Jason leaned forward, hands gripping the edge of the table, as if holding on could change what was coming. Vanessa sat back, arms crossed, her eyes already drifting toward the exit. The court recognizes the family trust as valid and enforceable. The judge continued, and acknowledges Emily Carter as the sole beneficiary. Jason exhaled sharply. No, he whispered. You can't just do this. The judge didn't look at him. Furthermore, she added, the clause triggered by the filing of divorce was activated lawfully. Jason's head snapped up. That clause was never explained to me, he argued. I didn't understand what I was signing. The judge finally met his eyes. Mr. Carter, not reading a document does not invalidate it. The words landed heavy.
Permanent.
Jason's lawyer leaned toward him, whispering urgently, but Jason wasn't listening. He was staring at Dorothy. You planned this, he said, his voice cracking. You were waiting for me to fail. Dorothy's voice was quiet. I was waiting for you to choose better. Vanessa shifted in her seat again, her foot tapping now. Nervous, impatient. So, what does this mean? She asked suddenly. Right now. The judge turned toward her. It means, she said calmly, Mr. Carter has no legal claim to the residence. Vanessa's mouth tightened. And, Mrs. Carter, she pressed. The judge glanced at me. Mrs. Carter retains full right to remain in the home. Jason's hands dropped to his lap. The fight drained out of him. Slowly, visibly. But that's not all. The judge continued. Jason looked up again, fear flickering back. Given the circumstances, she said, the court is ordering a brief recess before issuing final directives regarding occupancy and asset separation. The gavel struck recess. Just long enough for reality to settle in. People stood, murmurs filling the room. Jason remained seated, staring at nothing. Vanessa stood immediately. She didn't touch him, didn't ask if he was okay. She just grabbed her purse and stepped away. Dorothy finally turned toward me. For the first time, she smiled. Not triumphantly, softly. And in that quiet moment, as the courtroom emptied, I realized something else. The house wasn't just mine. For the first time in years, my life was too. Recess felt longer than the entire hearing. Jason sat frozen at the table, hands clasped, staring straight ahead, like the room might disappear if he didn't look at it. Vanessa stood near the door, scrolling on her phone, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. Michael leaned toward me. Don't relax yet, he whispered. This isn't finished. I nodded, even though my body felt strangely light, like something heavy had already been lifted. And I didn't trust it. Across the room, Jason finally turned toward me. His voice was low, pleading now. Emily, we can talk about this, he said. We don't have to do it this way. I didn't answer. I looked past him. For years, that silence would have terrified me. Now, it felt like air. Vanessa approached him, not gently. What does this mean for us? She asked sharply. You said this was handled. Jason rubbed his face. Just give me a minute, he muttered. She laughed once, short, bitter. A minute, she snapped. I didn't sign up for surprises. She glanced at me, then back at him. Dorothy remained seated, hands folded, eyes forward. Jason watched her. You could stop this, he said quietly. You're my mother. Dorothy didn't turn. And you are a grown man, she replied. That's why I can't. The judge returned. Everyone stood. The room settled again, tighter this time, more final. Court is back in session, she announced. Jason's breath hitched. The preliminary ruling stands. The judge said, and the court will now address occupancy. Jason's head lifted slightly. Hope flickering. Mr. Carter. The judge continued, you will vacate the residence within 30 days. Vanessa stiffened. Jason stared. 30 days, he repeated. That's impossible. The judge was unmoved. Additionally, she added, any attempt to interfere with Mrs. Carter's residence will be treated as contempt. Jason slumped back. Vanessa stepped away from him. Slowly, deliberately, the space between them grew visible, and in that widening gap, I saw the truth clearly for the first time. Jason hadn't lost the house. He had lost everything he used to control me. Jason didn't stand up right away. He sat there, staring at the table, as if the wood might explain how everything slipped out of his hands. 30 days. That was all the judge had said. But to him, it sounded like a countdown to something much worse. Vanessa broke the silence. You told me this was temporary, she hissed, leaning close, her smile gone, her voice sharp. You said she'd be out by now. Jason swallowed. I didn't expect. She cut him off. You didn't expect to lose, she said flatly. People nearby pretended not to listen, but no one missed the shift. This wasn't a couple anymore. It was a negotiation. Falling apart. Michael leaned toward me again. This is the moment, he whispered. Stay calm. I nodded, even though my heart was racing again, because calm didn't mean safe. Not yet. The judge flipped another page. There is one final matter, she said. Jason looked up sharply. His lawyer stiffened. Vanessa stopped pacing. During review of the trust, the judge continued. The court noted a secondary provision. Jason's breath caught. What provision? He asked. The judge met his eyes. A protection clause for the beneficiary. I felt my fingers curl inward. Protection. Michael stood. Your Honor, he said, the trust requires that if Mr. Carter contests ownership after activation, additional safeguards apply. Jason's face drained of color. What safeguards? He demanded. The judge read carefully. Immediate transfer of utilities, account control, and exclusive access to the residence. Vanessa froze. You mean, she said slowly, he can't even stay there? The judge looked at her, then back at Jason. That is correct. Jason stood up suddenly. That's my house, he shouted. I built my life there. The gavel struck hard.
Sit
down. Jason obeyed, his legs shaking. Dorothy finally spoke again. You built your image there, she said quietly. Not a life. Jason looked at her, eyes wide, as if seeing her clearly.
For the first time.
You chose power over people, she continued. And power never stays. Vanessa stepped back another inch. Just one. But it was enough. Her hand slipped from Jason's arm. I need air, she muttered, already turning away. She didn't look back. The judge finished. Mrs. Carter, she said, addressing me directly. Effective immediately. The residence is solely under your control. The words echoed inside me. Effective immediately. Not later, not soon. Now. Jason sank into his chair, and as I watched him, smaller, quieter, no longer certain, I realized something unexpected. This wasn't the moment I felt victorious. It was the moment I felt free. The room stayed quiet. After the judge finished speaking, too quiet. Jason sat frozen, his mouth slightly open, like the words hadn't reached him yet. Effective immediately. Those two words had just erased his authority. Dorothy stood slowly, not because she was asked to, but because she chose to. The sound of her chair sliding back cut through the stillness. Jason looked up at her, hope flickering again, desperate, childlike. Mom, he said softly, please. Dorothy didn't rush. She stepped forward until she was close enough that only he could hear her. But everyone listened anyway. I didn't do this to punish you, she said quietly, her voice steady, controlled. I did this because I watched you turn love into leverage. Jason shook his head. You don't understand, he whispered. I was trying to build something. Dorothy met his eyes. No, she said. You were trying to win. Vanessa hovered near the aisle, arms wrapped around herself now, no longer confident, just calculating. So that's it, she asked loudly. He's out. The judge looked at her. This court does not recognize your involvement in the property. She replied flatly. Vanessa's lips tightened. Dorothy turned toward me, and for the first time, she reached out. Her hand rested gently on my arm. Emily stayed silent, longer than she should have. Dorothy said, her voice carrying through the room, but silence is not weakness. Jason flinched. She kept the peace, while you kept score. Dorothy continued, and you mistook her patience for permission. Jason looked away. Michael spoke next, quiet, precise. Your Honor, we request the court acknowledge Mrs. Carter's right to remain undisturbed in the residence. The judge nodded. So noted, she said. Jason's lawyer lowered his head. He knew. This was over. Vanessa took a step back, then another. I can't deal with this, she muttered. You should have told me. Jason reached for her. She pulled away. Hard.
Don't, she snapped.
This is on you. She turned and walked out of the courtroom, heels clicking fast, angry, final. The sound faded, and with it, the last illusion Jason had. Dorothy looked down at him. You still have time to change who you are, she said. Jason laughed once, broken, hollow. Change into what? He whispered. Dorothy answered, without hesitation. Someone who understands that ownership does not mean control. She turned away, and as she walked back to her seat, I felt it. Not triumph, not revenge, but something deeper. Closure. Because the sentence she spoke wasn't meant for him.
It was meant for me.
Jason unraveled quietly. No shouting. No rage.
Just a slow collapse.
That everyone in the room could feel. He sat there, hands trembling, eyes darting, as if searching for an exit that no longer existed. The judge gathered her papers. This court is prepared to issue its final directive, she said, her voice steady, unemotional. Jason's lawyer whispered urgently to him, but Jason barely heard it. Vanessa was gone. The house was gone. The future he imagined had evaporated. Jason stood suddenly. I need time, he said hoarsely. This isn't fair. The judge didn't look up. Fairness, she replied, is not measured by comfort. The gavel tapped lightly. Dorothy remained standing. Jason, she said, not unkind, not forgiving either. This is the moment. You stop blaming others. Jason's shoulders sagged. I just wanted to win, he whispered. Dorothy nodded. And you did. For a long time. The words hit harder than accusation ever could. Michael leaned toward me. Listen carefully, he said. The judge cleared her throat. Mr. Carter, she announced, effective immediately. Jason's breath caught. You are to vacate the residence. Within the period specified. She paused. And that pause felt endless. Failure to comply. She continued. Will result in enforcement action. Jason nodded weakly. He didn't argue. He didn't protest. There was nothing left to say. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Carter, she said, you are free to return home today. Home. The word felt different now. Lighter, safe. Jason looked at me then, not with anger, but with something worse. Regret. You could have told me, he said quietly. We could have fixed this. I shook my head. No, I replied softly. We couldn't. Dorothy stepped between us.
She didn't lose you, she said.
You lost her. Jason closed his eyes. The judge stood. This court is adjourned. The gavel struck. Final. As people began to file out. Jason remained seated, alone, broken, and as I walked toward the exit, I didn't feel heavy anymore. I felt steady. Because the house wasn't just a structure. It was proof that silence can still be strength, and waiting can still be power. The courthouse hallway felt louder. Then the courtroom, footsteps, voices, doors opening and closing, life rushing forward, while Jason stood still. He followed me out, slowly, hesitant. Emily, he called. I stopped. Not because I owed him anything, but because I no longer feared him. He stood a few feet away, hands empty, shoulders slumped. I didn't think it would end like this, he said quietly. I looked at him, really looked. The confidence was gone. The control was gone. All that remained was a man standing in the consequences of his own choices. Vanessa appeared at the far end of the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, voice sharp, already spinning a new story. She glanced back once, saw Jason standing there, and didn't slow down, didn't wave, didn't hesitate. She turned the corner and disappeared. Jason watched her go, his face tightening. As realization settled in, "That's it," he whispered. "She's just leaving?" I didn't answer. Some lessons don't need explanations. Dorothy stepped out beside me. She looked tired now, not defeated, just older. "I'm sorry," she said softly, "for the years you felt alone." I swallowed. "You didn't owe me anything," I replied. She nodded. But I owed myself the truth. Jason shifted his weight. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked quietly. Dorothy met his eyes. "Anywhere that doesn't belong to someone else." Jason flinched. Michael shook my hand.
"Take today," he said.
"Breathe." I thanked him, then stepped outside. The air felt different, cooler, cleaner. As if the world itself had made space for me. I took a deep breath and felt something new settle in my chest. Not anger, not victory. Relief. Behind me, Jason remained inside the courthouse, watching people pass, watching his life move forward. Without him, and for the first time, I didn't feel responsible for what happened to him next. The drive home felt unreal. Traffic lights, passing cars, a city moving like nothing had changed. But everything had. I parked in front of the house, my house, and just sat there for a moment, with the engine running, hands resting on the steering wheel, breathing. The front door looked the same, but the weight attached to it was gone. Inside, the air was still. No tension, no waiting, just quiet. I walked from room to room slowly, touching the walls, the counters, the light switches, as if greeting something familiar. For the first time, Jason's things were still there. Shoes by the door, a jacket on the chair. But they no longer felt permanent. They felt temporary, already leaving. My phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "Court order has been filed. Utilities and access are officially in your name." I stared at the screen, then let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for years. Another message followed, from Dorothy. "I'll come by tomorrow to help you change the locks, only if you want." I smiled softly. "I'd like that," I typed back. I opened the windows, let fresh air move through the rooms, carrying out something old, stale, finished. For the first time, I made a decision, without checking with anyone else. I ordered new locks, changed the security code, deleted Jason's contact, without hesitation. Later that evening, I sat on the living room floor, back against the couch, holding a cup of tea, watching the light fade, and something settled in me. Not excitement, not joy, but certainty. Jason no longer had access to my space, to my voice, to my future, and that felt like peace. But as I sat there,
The doorbell rang.
Once, sharp, unexpected, my heart skipped. I stood slowly, walked toward the door, and paused, hand resting on the handle, knowing whatever waited on the other side, I would face it on my own terms. I didn't open the door right away. I stood there, hand still on the handle, listening to my own breathing. The bell rang again, slower this time, careful. Emily, Jason's voice came through the door, lower, stripped of confidence. It's me. I closed my eyes. Just for a second. This was the moment
I used to dread.
Now it was just a choice. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. Jason stood on the porch. No jacket, no smile, hands empty. The house lights behind me framed everything clearly, where I stood and where he didn't belong. I just need a few things, he said quietly. My clothes, my laptop. I nodded once. 10 minutes, I said. He hesitated, then stepped inside. Slowly, like a guest. He moved through the living room, eyes scanning the space, taking in the changes already happening. The open windows, the missing photos, the air. You changed the locks? He asked. Yes, I replied. He swallowed as he gathered his things. He kept glancing at me, as if waiting for anger, for tears, for something familiar. He got none of it. Vanessa left, he said suddenly. She didn't even wait.
I didn't respond.
He tried again. I never meant to hurt you. I looked at him, then, steady, clear. Hurt isn't always loud, I said. Sometimes it's years of being erased. Jason lowered his head. Dorothy's car pulled into the driveway. Jason froze. She's here, he asked. Yes, I said calmly. Dorothy stepped inside moments later. Keys already in hand. She didn't scold him. Didn't hug him either. This is where I stop helping, she said quietly. Jason nodded. He understood. 10 minutes passed. Jason stood at the door. Bag over his shoulder. No place to go. I hope you're happy, he said softly. I met his eyes. I'm peaceful, I replied, and that was the truth. He stepped outside. The door closed behind him. Not slammed, just closed. Dorothy exhaled. You did well, she said. I nodded. Not because I needed approval, but because I finally trusted myself. That night, I slept in my bed, alone, without fear. And for the first time in years, sleep came easily. Morning light spilled through the windows, soft, gentle, undemanding. I woke up slowly, not from tension, not from worry, but from rest. For years, mornings had meant bracing myself. What mood would Jason be in? What needed fixing? What apology would I need to make? For something I didn't do? This morning, there was none of that, just quiet. I walked into the kitchen barefoot, started the coffee, and stood there, listening to the house
settle around me.
It sounded different, lighter. Dorothy arrived mid-morning, a bag of tools in one hand, fresh pastries in the other. I thought we'd earn the comfort,
she said gently.
We worked side by side, changing locks, replacing small things Jason never cared about. Small acts with big meaning. You don't have to stay involved, I told her quietly. She shook her head. I want to, she replied, not as his mother, but as a woman who sees another woman starting over. The words warmed something deep inside me. After she left, I went room by room again. This time imagining changes. New paint, new furniture, new routines. Not to erase the past,
but to build something
that belonged only to me. I packed away old photos, not with anger, but with gratitude for the lessons they carried. I kept one picture of myself, laughing, from before everything hardened. I placed it on the shelf. My phone buzzed, a message from Jason. I'm sorry. No explanation. No excuses. I read it, then deleted it. Some chapters don't need responses. That afternoon, I opened the front door and let the breeze move freely again, watched sunlight dance on the floor, and felt something bloom quietly inside me. Hope. Because this house, this life was no longer a place. I survived. It was a place. I could finally grow. Change doesn't arrive loudly. It slips in when no one is watching. The days after the hearing fell into a new rhythm. Quiet, steady mine. I stopped checking my phone every few minutes. Stopped bracing for interruptions. Stopped explaining myself to an empty space. Dorothy called once in a while. Never about Jason. Always about me. How are you sleeping? What color did you choose for the living room? Small questions that made room for bigger answers. I took down the last of the things that didn't feel like me anymore. His mugs. His framed awards. His version of our story. In their place. Plants, books, light. One afternoon, I ran into an old friend at the grocery store. You look different, she said. I smiled. I feel different. She nodded, as if that told her everything. Jason tried once more. A voicemail this time. His voice sounded tired, lost, smaller. I don't know how this became my life, he said. I listened, not with anger, but with distance. Then I deleted it, because growth isn't about punishing the past. It's about refusing to live in it. That evening, I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip low, thinking about the woman I used to be. The one who stayed quiet. The one who thought peace meant disappearing. I wished I could tell her something simple, something true. You are not weak for being patient. You are not foolish for loving deeply. But you don't have to stay where you are shrinking. As the light faded, I felt ready. Not to move on, but to move forward. Because the house was never really the victory. The victory was choosing myself without apology. Some endings don't arrive with noise. They arrive with peace. Weeks later, the house felt different. Not just quieter, but lighter. I moved through the rooms, without hesitation, without checking, without bracing myself. The walls no longer held tension. They held possibility. I stopped replaying old conversations, stopped wondering what I should have said sooner, because clarity had replaced regret. Dorothy came by once more, not to fix anything, not to advise, just to see me, standing steady, rooted, whole. You're going to be fine, she said. I smiled. I already am. Jason faded into the past, not with anger, not with triumph, but with acceptance. He wanted control. I chose peace. And peace was the better victory. I learned something important. Silence is not weakness. Patience is not surrender. And leaving doesn't mean losing. Sometimes it means finally choosing yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. Before you go, tell me in the comments which moment hit you the hardest. And if you want more stories of strength, healing, and unexpected victories, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.